right, we're live.
We are.
Welcome to Monday Takeaway here on BigEastCoastBias.com. My name is Chris Novak, along with Rob O'Neill. For once, we're actually broadcasting on a Monday again, so I'm thankful for that. We weren't able to do a show last week thanks to sickness on my part and Pierce's part as well as just some overall time constraints that we had. But nonetheless, it was an eventful week of basketball, to say the very least. The NCAA tournament kicked off, and it was quite a freaking doozy.
Yeah, for all the talk about how there's no stars and how it's going to suffer without Ben Simmons and all that, I think it was okay. I know ratings are down a little bit from last year, but last year was also the second highest since 1991 or something, and this is the third highest. So,
yeah, and also last year you had the storyline of Kentucky possibly going to an undefeated season. So
yeah, it's been fun so far.
Yeah, it seemed like that late window on both Friday night and last night brought the goods not once but twice. That was as chaotic as I think I've ever seen a sporting event or a series of sporting events. I know Russell Steinberg brought it up from Russell Steinberg of SB Nation and a dime back, a UConn blog, said that it was probably the most exciting couple minutes or sequence since the conclusion of the 2011 MLB regular season, which, as you may or may not remember, was extremely chaotic.
Yeah.
And I find it very tough to disagree with that, considering all that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Michigan State lost to Middle Tennessee State like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's not even like a 15 beat a 2, and that's not even one of the biggest storylines to come out of the NCAA tournament this past weekend.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but it got overshadowed.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I don't even know where we're gonna start here. I mean, I guess go down the bracket instead, or yeah. I mean,
why don't we just start with the biggest storyline for the Big East going into the tournament and how that turned out, and it in fact turned out pretty well considering the fact that Villanova destroyed Iowa yesterday afternoon in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the elephant has been escorted out of the room. Yeah, really no doubt yesterday that Villanova was going to win that game from start to finish. Just thoroughly dominant display. Personally, I'm not sure if they can make it to the Final Four, but you got a winnable game against Miami, and then you're 40 minutes away from a trip to Houston. Beat Miami and then see what happens.
Yeah, it's good to see that now the talk won't be, Villanova hasn't made the second weekend since 2009, and it's now just going to be Villanova hasn't made the Final Four since 2009. And I saw someone bring that up yesterday. I don't remember. Yeah, I mean that's a fine thing to say, considering all that's happened and all the talk and all the losses that Villanova's had over the years.
I guess the second biggest storyline going in would be Seton Hall, and they kind of ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Gonzaga being closer to Denver. Say what you want about the game not starting till 11 Eastern. Say what you want about the elevation, the time. They got beat.
Yeah, they got spanked.
The younger team got beaten by the older, more experienced team, and Gonzaga. I don't know what to say about them, because if they didn't win their conference tournament, they wouldn't be here.
No, they probably wouldn't be, but the thing is, they're playing at a really high level right now, and their guards are playing really well, which was the big concern going into this year since they lost, Kevin Pangos and whatnot, that this team was going to probably struggle, and they did underachieve this year out west in Spokane. But everything's kind of coming together for them right now, and they are reaping the benefits of it.
Did Seton Hall end up being a little underseeded? Yeah, they probably could have been a 5.
Yes, they did.
But if they're a 5, though, I mean, do you like them against Arkansas Little Rock?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, if you want them to be a 5, okay, I mean, I know that we said that they should deserve a 5 or even a 4, but if you want them to be a 5, that's a dangerous spot to be.
Yeah.
It's very precarious, as we've learned over the years that 5-12 upsets happen very frequently, and they could have messed around and gotten upset by Arkansas, Little Rock, or Yale. So
yeah, and then I mean, the other two, the 2 9 seeds, you knew they were both going to end up playing ones.
yeah.
Honestly, both of them gave a real good effort. Providence was in that game, but the foul trouble really screwed them, and Butler was in it.
Butler was in it the whole way.
It's different this year for the Big East, only having one team in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, because I feel like last year, they had teams that were pretty high seeded, if I recall correctly. Because I know Georgetown was a 4.
Yeah, I mean Villanova was a 1.
Villanova was a 1. Xavier was like a 6.
Butler was high, I believe.
Yeah, Butler was like a. Let me check here. Butler was also a 6.
And St. John's was.
St. John's was a 9.
Okay.
So they weren't going to be favored. Providence was also a 6, and they lost to Dayton.
Yeah.
So it's a little different this year, considering last year they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that arguably were going to be favored in at least one or more games. Yeah. Especially so with Villanova and Georgetown, though Georgetown faced Utah, a very good Utah team that might have been somewhat underseeded as a 5 last year. But even last year, you had a few teams that at least won their first games, and then they just Butler faced the Notre Dame team that went to the Elite 8. St. John's faced a Dayton team that was a tough out, and no one was really expecting Xavier to make the Sweet 16. But this year, you had teams that with the exception of Seton Hall, you knew Butler and Providence weren't going to be favored against Virginia or North Carolina.
Yeah,
and yet I thought Butler played very, very well against Virginia.
Yeah, and I mean, for Butler to be in the tournament back-to-back years, that's still an accomplishment. I mean, yeah. I think the thinking has to go away from, they made back-to-back national championship games, because that doesn't happen.
No, that's incredibly tough to do.
So, I mean, it's an accomplishment in and of itself to make the NCAA tournament. And people like to kind of say, "Oh, well, you lose." And for Providence, they haven't won a tournament game since 1997.
Yeah,
and here they are. And Providence, they're losing Chris Dunn, but if Ben Bentel stays, it might be a struggle next year. But Ed Cooley is the guy you want over there.
I said it over the weekend. I think that, it's a small sample size, but if you're a Providence fan, you have to be pleased with the effort that, the unit without Chris Dunn that was on the floor frequently, since Dunn found himself in foul trouble in both games this past weekend, with how successful they were with Cartwright and Bullock and Lamamba all out on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy to, be somewhat excited about what comes. And what you said about what we're saying about Butler, they made back-to-back national championship games, and that's incredibly tough to do. You have to be pleased with the fact that in their last 5 tournament appearances, they've won at least one game, and that's incredibly tough to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because the NCAA tournament is the hardest tournament in sports, besides perhaps the Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup playoffs in the NHL, yep. Because you're facing teams on neutral floors that more than likely you haven't faced before in the regular season, and you only have like 2 or 3 days to prepare for them.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's coming. So you have to play it out, and it's incredibly difficult. And I give credit to Butler and Providence for sticking with UNC and Virginia over the weekend, especially with Butler, who was basically trading blows with UVA the whole time. The only problem was just that, Malcolm Brogdon shut down Travis when he came out of nowhere and did what he did, which was totally ridiculous. and Virginia just couldn't miss.
Well, that's what they did against Villanova.
Yeah.
Back in December. That's the same thing. It was a close game at the half, and then Virginia just took over down the stretch.
Yeah. And what are you going to do? I mean, there's nothing you can do. You can't be disappointed in the efforts that Butler and Providence were put forth, and you can't really say, oh, the Big East is bad because they only have one team left now. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit, but you can't really be disappointed when you say that. You can't really be staring a hole over at Butler and Providence because you knew that they weren't going to be favored against UNC and UVA, and it would be a shocker if either of them won. Like, sure, they had puncher's chances and they were two very good teams, but come on, Tar Heels and the Cats.
And Butler next year now becomes really interesting.
I agree.
Because you got Weidman, you got Travis, you got Keelan, you got Tyler Lewis, so. You got a decent amount of return, sure.
Yeah. Keith and Savage.
Yeah, but losing Dunham and Roosevelt Jones, big. But they're also bringing in the best recruiting class in school history.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how those guys are able to mesh right away, but, we'll see.
I think they could be a tournament team again. I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't be.
Yeah. Providence a little bit more of a question mark.
Yeah, they are. Like I said, I mean, small sample size, you have to be pleased with what they've got, but, obviously it all also hinges on Bentel. He's probably going to be testing the waters because
there's no
there's nothing really to lose with the new rules. So, but if he does come back, he's a bona fide Big East Player of the Year candidate, and he'll be very good again. But it's just a matter of how Providence's role players will be able to step up.
Yeah. And for Seton Hall, they'll be back next year. I don't think Whitehead's going to stick with the NBA.
You don't think so?
I mean, the rumor is he's only going if he has a first-round grade, and I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't see that happening either. I think the first round is too loaded this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredibly tough. But he has to have an amazing workout to be able to pull that off.
I just hope he gets the right advice.
Yeah, let's hope he does get the right advice.
But I mean, if Whitehead comes back, Seton Hall's losing only Derek Gordon, which obviously the leadership role that he played this year was huge. But they'll be fine.
All those players that they have will all be juniors, and they'll have more experience, and they're going to be even more dangerous. And they'll have, the experience of what happened this year kind of fuel them going forward. I wouldn't want to be messing around with them. But then again, and I was thinking to myself, and I said so yesterday, like, Jalen Brunson, he's improved. He's starting to improve a lot, and he's starting to play really well, and it's really scary to watch considering the fact that he's only going to get better. So good luck defending him next year, Big East, because he's putting on a show right now.
Yeah.
All right, so
should we talk about the one Big East team that you can be a little disappointed in?
Yeah, let's talk about Xavier. That was a bit of a tough pill to swallow yesterday.
Yeah, when you lose like that, yeah.
Oh boy. I mean, you can say that maybe Wisconsin shouldn't have gotten the opportunity because it was probably a flop. But at the same time, you cannot put yourself in that position.
No, and the shot at the end, it is what it is. You played perfect defense.
Oh yeah, and Koenig just Koenig, to his credit, put up a ridiculous shot. But that you cannot put yourself in that position to lose to a team that you likely are markedly better than. And I know Wisconsin probably should have been a lot better than they were this year.
Yeah.
They had some struggles in the beginning, And it probably had a lot to do with, all the experience that departed from their Final Four teams and their national runner-up team from last year. And they were trying to, get back to where they were, which they did during Big Ten conference play.
Yeah.
But that was a bad loss.
It's not to take anything away from Xavier this year.
No, absolutely not.
They're another bunch that'll be right back next year.
Yeah, of course.
It sounds like Jalen Reynolds, who he had a chance that maybe he could have went to the NBA, but from what he said last night, he sounds like he wants to come back for another year.
I don't blame him. He's still a little raw, in my opinion. I feel like he should be a lot better than he is.
Yeah. Haven't heard anything about Blewett, but you got another year of Sumner. I would imagine Blewett sticks around.
Yeah.
Quentin Gooden was Basketball Player of the Year in Kentucky. He's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing James Farr, but, you got some other guys that you can kind of work with.
Yep.
But it is a tough loss, and, it's not to take anything away from them. This was a great season for them. Chris Mack could have been the fifth or sixth active coach to go to 4 Sweet 16 since 2010.
Yep.
And it's a real bummer, but again, it doesn't take anything away from them. You could be a little disappointed in them, sure. But you kind of knew from the start it was going to be a hard game because Wisconsin was, until they went on that run, as they've done all year, Wisconsin had the control most of the first half.
Yeah, they did. And I don't know how much it necessarily had an outcome on it, because obviously the game-winning shot was a three-pointer, but Xavier's interior defense kind of did them in again. Wisconsin shot over 50% inside the three-point line, and Xavier had allowed teams to shoot above 50%, like in almost every game down the stretch. I need to see their numbers against the first team that they played against, Weber State.
Yeah.
Okay, Weber State. Yeah, Weber State shot 50% against them on 2-point makes, and then Wisconsin shot, I think, like I said, they shot like 53.1%. So that means that, and then Seton Hall in the biggest semifinal shot 59%. Marquette shot 46%. Creighton shot 61% against them inside. Seton Hall shot 54% against them inside. Like, it's just
Seton Hall's got the big guys, and Creighton's got Jeff Griselle. So I mean,
but it's like, you have big bodies down there. You can't let that happen.
No,
you can't let that happen. Again, I don't know how much of an impact it had last night on the game, but pretty evident that they had a problem going down the stretch, and it showed up again.
Yeah. Well, also, they were one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country this year, 73%, and last night they were 14 for 21, 66%. So,
yeah, neither team really shot well from the free throw line last night. And then they all.
You lose a close game, you look at everything like that. You put everything under the microscope.
Yeah, exactly. And they shot only 31% from the 3-point line, which, considering that they shot 50% against Weber State, you go around and shoot almost 30% the next game, there's going to be a drop.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Should we just back away from the Big East for a little bit here?
Yeah, let's back away from the Big East a little bit. Good thing no one in this conference did exactly what Northern Iowa did, because that was horrendous.
Also, good thing no one in this conference did what the Pac-12 did, even though, we both have one team, but it's different.
But there's a difference, because I feel like the Pac-12, all the teams that were in there besides Oregon kind of embarrassed themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they had a 4 lose. They had a 6 lose to a team.
3 lose.
Arizona lost to a team that played 2 days earlier.
Yeah. Not only lost, they got spanked.
Yeah.
They had their first double-digit loss in 3 years.
A couple 8-9s, whatever.
Christ.
But who else? Yeah, Utah got beat down also.
Yep. They got beat down by Gonzaga, which. And the problem with that game was just the fact that they took out Pirtle when he had 2 fouls, which I thought was silly as hell because Sabonis just started eating. And it's like, yeah, he has 2 fouls, but, you have till 5. Why are you taking your big guy out when there's an obvious mismatch there that they're going to take advantage of?
Drop a little CM Punk, I have till 5 on us there.
Yep, I did.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
not lost on me. Let's see. UConn, Colorado wasn't much of a game. Maryland, South Dakota State was interesting for a little bit. Just trying to think back to. Iowa and Temple.
Yeah, that was definitely an intriguing game.
Where, because it went. Didn't some stuff happen at the end to even get it to overtime?
Yeah, Woodbury. Because Temple made a run late, and then it went to OT. But then Adam Woodbury had the game winner in.
Because they shoved the guy out of the way.
Yeah, well,
it was a big push off.
It was a pretty good push off, and then Utah and Woodbury were absolutely terrible interviews, which was very awkward to watch.
But yeah, Temple was down by 10 with 12 minutes to go. And then down by 8 with 8 minutes to go. And then, they made a run. And, because the guy got fouled shooting the 3.
Yeah.
And he made all 3 free throws.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, that's what happened. Watched a lot of basketball, kind of all runs together.
Yep.
See, Villanova-Asheville was a pretty boring game. Especially after Villanova kind of pulled away.
Yep. Iowa State is a team that really kind of helped themselves this week because no one really thought – I guess the spotlight wasn't on them as it was in the past 2 years because, they were looked at as a possible Final Four contender 2 years ago. And then Yang got hurt in the and they didn't really stand much of a chance against Connecticut in the Sweet 16. And then last year, they were a 3 seed. They lost to UAB when a lot of them picked them to be a dark horse after they won the Big 12 tournament, which they did the year before too, which is why the hype was around them. This year, not so much. I felt they were I feel like they're still kind of under the radar, and yet now they make the Sweet 16, which sort of ties into frickin' Syracuse, who, it's so funny how this tournament works sometimes. The Syracuse team 2 years ago started off 25-0, could have had the 1 seed in the East, played in Buffalo, which they did anyway, but they could have had the 1 seed and played in Buffalo, and then gone all the way down the state into the Garden. Wouldn't have had to leave the state of New York before going to the Final Four, and they can't make the Sweet 16. This team that goes 25-6 in 2011 can't make the Sweet 16. But this Syracuse team, the one that loses to Pitt 3 times, the one that loses 4 out of 5 to end the regular season, the one that lost to Georgetown and St. Frickin' John's, can't make – and they make the Sweet 16? Seriously?
Well, the game – they didn't actually lose to Georgetown and St. John's because the games with Mike Hopkins didn't count.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Don't count those.
It's so stupid.
Well, but looking how they played under Mike Hopkins compared to now, Mike Hopkins might not be the next coach after all.
It was a tough adjustment, but it just really? Yeah. This Syracuse team is the one that gets the second weekend. Not those.
They wouldn't have beaten Michigan State.
Well, no, but you don't really. They beat whoever's in front of them. They probably wouldn't have beat Michigan State, but
we should talk about Michigan State real quick.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking considering the fact that Middle Tennessee they beat them handily.
It was wire to wire, I believe.
Yeah, it was wire to wire. Michigan State never led.
And I think everyone watching was just waiting for, as the 1 and 2 seeds usually do when they're down, they usually go on a big run and then that's it. But
yeah, but it never happened, which You have to play the games, but Michigan State probably got burned by the fact that they weren't a 1 seed.
Yeah.
But still, you have to. And Middle Tennessee was probably underseeded as a 15.
Well, yeah, and you figure Michigan State was the first 2 seed, right?
Yeah, they pretty much were. They were this first 2 seed or the 5th 1 seed.
So you would think they'd play the 4th 15 seed, but they didn't get to.
Nope.
Weber State was the 4th 15 seed.
Yeah, the committee kind of botched a lot.
Yeah.
This weekend, and that was pretty evident. Especially the fact that, in my opinion, Kentucky and Indiana had no business playing in the round of 32.
Yeah.
First of all, Kentucky shouldn't have been a 4. Yep. Second of all, Indiana probably shouldn't have been a 5.
No.
And they had no business playing in the round of 32. That game should probably have been saved for an Elite 8 contest because both teams are really good.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like how Indiana and North Carolina now are playing the Sweet 16, and now, and if Notre Dame beats Wisconsin, I really hope people start talking about what Mike Brey's done the past couple of years. You mentioned it yesterday.
It's crazy. It's totally crazy. I mean, he goes like 6 straight appearances without making the second weekend. Now, back to back years, he's made the second weekend just out of nowhere, and even after, because Notre Dame, for a while, because they don't before last year, the last second weekend appearance that they had was back in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
For so long, they were basically a team that you thought was an automatic exit in the first weekend, totally guaranteed.
Yeah.
And now, even without a lack of real defensive presence, they're shooting the lights out.
Yeah, they are. And like you say, the lack of defense. They have a very big offense to defense drop on Ken Palm.
Yeah, and they even had it last year too when they made the Elite 8 and they pushed Kentucky right down to the wire.
Yeah, last year was frustrating because they should have lost to Butler, but they tied it with the 3 at the buzzer. And
yep.
Yeah. But Mike Brey's done a real good job. We'll get to the Sweet 16 in a minute, but all the matchups are very watchable.
Oh my God, this is one of the best Sweet 16 rounds ever, in my opinion, because there's not one game that I look at and like, oh, that one's terrible. No, they're all good.
Yeah.
They all have a level of intrigue to them.
What else happened? Oh yeah, Northern Iowa pulled first they pulled off a really good win at the buzzer.
Yeah.
Which at some point we might need to talk about Shaka Smart's last couple tournament appearances.
Well, I mean, he's doing what he can with Texas.
Well, he'll have his players in next year, and
exactly. And I think he did a good job this year.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone expected this Texas team to make the tournament. So
no, I don't know.
You look at Texas lost on a half-court shot by I forgot the guy's name already.
Jesperson.
Yeah. So that was that, and then Northern Iowa last night. They were winning by 12 with 30 seconds to go.
Something like that, and they let up a 14-2 run in the final 44 seconds of the game. A 12-0 run in the last 30 seconds of the game.
Yeah,
that was bad.
I watched it, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'll never say the kids choked because they're kids, and I'm not gonna put the blame on them or whatever. But that was one for the ages.
Yeah, and
being on the wrong side of history. My goodness.
I know you're not thinking like this, but when he was trapped in the corner before Texas A&M tied the game, he really should have just either thrown the ball as far down the court as he could, and if it went out of bounds, it went out of bounds, or just taken the travel and let them, at least do that and run an out of bounds play instead of. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Instead of
doing what he did.
Yeah, what he did was hold on. Okay. he kind of just tried to throw it off the guy and get it out of bounds so they maintained
Yeah,
possession, and he kind of missed, and then it led to an open layup for A&M to tie the game.
yeah. It's very unfortunate what happened to them.
Yeah. But so I ended
That's
up
all I'll
losing.
say.
A&M ended up winning, and as a result, you got a lot of coaches that have been to a Sweet 16 before in the Sweet 16.
Yep, 13. I believe it's either 13 or 14 out of 16
Oh, let's
coaches
see.
that are there.
Bill Self, Mark Turgeon. These two.
Yep.
Right. Dana Altman has been there.
Yes, we saw him in 2012 when Oregon played Louisville, or 2013, whatever it was.
I don't know if Billy Kennedy's been there.
He hasn't. He's one of the others. So yeah,
Okay.
it's Tony Bennett, Bill Self, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, Lon Kruger, Larinaga, Altman, Crean, Few, Coach K, Turgeon, Boeheim, Bray, as well as, and that's about it. So yeah.
So it's Greg Gard, Billy Kennedy, and Steve Prom that haven't been there.
Exactly. We could have had 15 if Xavier won and if Northern Iowa won, since Ben Jacobson made it all the way back in 2010. So coaching does matter. Coaching does matter a lot.
Yeah, and I mean the same thing happened last year too. I think you had 12 coaches that have been there before. So
yeah, something like that.
yeah. Let's see here. What else? It was a crazy weekend.
What else? Well, we had that. You were talking about, weird things that happen in the moment. I was going to bring up the fact that Cincinnati, the player went for the dunk at the end of the game when he could have gone for a layup. But I mean, when you're thinking like that, like the final second or two of the game, there's not much you can really do.
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, you're just trying to put the ball in the basket, and it didn't work out for them. But
yeah, speaking of Cincinnati, Mick Cronin might be going to Vegas.
yeah, that was, and even weirder, Jamie Dixon might go to TCU.
That sounds like it's about official because they're announcing something tomorrow.
That's so weird. I mean, I know he played for TCU, but man, TCU's a weird job. You're on fertile recruiting land, but you're TCU.
Yeah, but what's he done at Pitt that they want to keep him? I mean,
yeah, and the Pitt job's weird too, because I don't know if it's a very good job, but I don't think it's a very bad job, and I don't think it's middle of the road either. It's a very, very in-betweenish.
Well, you got to recruit against Villanova.
You don't really have to recruit against anybody else except for any team, maybe in the Big Five. But
and I mean, Pat Chambers has started doing a decent job, but
Penn State's Penn State. I mean,
Villanova's going to take the majority of the Pennsylvania players. You're going to get what's left.
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, Penn State. Yeah, they've gotten some good recruits with Pat Chambers, but they're still Penn State. Penn State basketball is nothing.
Yeah. Speaking of coaching, real quick, you guys notice how Georgetown didn't even put out a statement that they were going to keep John Thompson?
Kind of indicative of something, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere.
No.
Please stop asking us.
I don't think any Big East coach is going anywhere.
No, not really, unless someone pulls someone away, and I don't see that happening.
No, not at all. But yeah, Jamie Dixon, TCU, they would open up Pitt. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Purdue had an epic collapse against UALR. Purdue should send Northern Iowa a gift basket for taking all the pressure off them, because that was horrible.
Speaking of coaches that might be in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, Matt Painter, I don't know if I would say that based on one result, but
I mean, it's not really one result, though. It's,
It's not, but that was definitely concerning,
yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah, and I think I'd call Purdue probably, of the 4 teams that play at the Crossroad Classic every year, they're probably number 4.
And I would definitely also think that even if Matt Painter does go, maybe Mizzou should probably fire Kim Anderson into the sun and then pull him in.
Yeah, they tried that once.
And then we ended up with Frank Haith. So they ended up with Frank Haith. And look how that turned out.
Oh, Tim Anderson's back another year. I already said. They win 11 games this year.
Cool story, Mizzou. You total dumpster fire.
Why
are we talking about Mizzou right now?
Might Jesus. Be in a little bit of trouble. I don't see too many coaches really changing jobs, though. I mean, every team
not really.
Did something this year did something, except for Georgetown and UCLA, and neither of their coaches are going anywhere.
Nope, but Steve Alford did return his contract extension.
Yeah, that was
which
weird.
Is kind of unprecedented and weird. But
that was strange.
It's very strange.
Unless Tom Izzo goes to the Cavs, which Pierce refused to ask him the other day. You never know. John Calipari might go to Lakers too.
Of course. Or the Kings to coach DeMarcus Cousins.
They got Rondo too. That would actually work.
Yeah,
Except
well,
aren't NBA coaches, so.
Yeah, well, the Knicks apparently are coveting Rondo because Knicks.
So they actually coach your home games next year.
Yeah. Stupid ass team.
Okay, didn't the Lakers try that once?
I think they did. I don't remember though.
Placement or something. It's not a good idea. You shouldn't have coaches.
But again, that's the Knicks for you. Why are we wasting time talking about the Knicks? I swear to God.
Anyway, back to the tournament. Stephen F. Austin beat West Virginia.
Yeah.
One of the only picks I had right in my bracket.
Yeah, that was a pretty well played game. Well, at least on Stephen F. Austin's side, they kind of took it to West Virginia, which kind of, I guess, surprised me a little bit, even though I originally had Stephen F. Austin winning that game, and then I switched out of it, which was a bad move. But
yeah. Let's see. We have covered.
We've covered a lot of ground here right now. Things are going pretty quickly, which is nice.
It is nice. Bill Murray's the new crying Jordan.
He is.
Which is a shame.
It is, but that's what happens.
Let's see. I guess we can talk about the Sweet 16 now at length.
Yeah, let's talk about the Sweet 16. So we have a lot of good matchups out there.
Cool. Yes.
So I guess we'll start.
We can talk about Creighton real quick too. Creighton's still alive.
Yeah, Creighton is still alive. They'll be making a play in the NIT.
They got a second home game after Wagner beat St. Bonaventure, and they beat the doors off of Wagner.
Yep. And now they'll be playing BYU in the next round.
Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
And that should be a good game. Creighton's kind of young. BYU's got a couple seniors. Kyle Collinsworth has the NCAA record for triple doubles in a season and career, I believe.
Yep, I believe that is correct.
So he's good. So we'll see what happens there. Creighton's been doing well. If you're not following them, you should be. We've been writing about them. Alex at both games. I imagine he'll write tomorrow as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. So let's start out east with North Carolina, Indiana. Should be a very fun matchup. I think that one's going to be intriguing to see because, while I think North Carolina might have the advantage, Indiana certainly has a lot of length and a lot of athletic wings that could present a problem for UNC. But with the way UNC has played in second halves lately, they look like they are as good as anybody out there right now.
Oh yeah, and Bryce Johnson's become their best player after Marcus Page really had all the talk early on.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like you said, for Indiana, they do have some guys on that team.
Yeah, Yogi Ferrell, Thomas Bryant, OG Anunoby is also a very good player.
And they can shoot the three.
Yeah, they can, and that could be very helpful for them since UNC doesn't exactly have the best perimeter defense, though it has improved lately. But UNC is also really bad at shooting 3-pointers, so
Which is
they
good
get hot.
because Indiana can't stop the three, really.
Yeah.
So, but just looking at the Ken Palm here, Indiana does turn the ball over an alarming amount, and UNC forces a decent amount of turnovers.
So that could be problematic.
Yeah. Rebounding, that's really going to be where the game's won because these are two real good rebounding teams.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that one will be good.
And then
I took North Carolina.
Yeah, I did too. And then down in the lower half of that pod, you have Notre Dame versus Wisconsin, which should be interesting, I guess, because Wisconsin's pretty efficient, but they run slow. Notre Dame is probably the exact opposite. Wisconsin's kind of going on a bit of a crazy run here. They had a terrible game against Pitt, and I mean that in both quality and performance. They still won. Then they beat Xavier yesterday, but Notre Dame also has played two really good games against Michigan and Stephen F. Austin. Not sure where to go with this game, to be honest with you. It could go either way.
No, I don't know either. To be honest with you, I didn't have either of these teams in the
Sweet 16.
Yeah. So
yeah, neither did I. So that's a coin flip to me, to be honest.
Actually, I think I had Notre Dame, but I'm losing to Xavier. So
that's fair.
Yeah. All right. What else? We move on to the Midwest there.
Yeah, let's move on to the Midwest. Virginia is playing. I believe they're playing Iowa State.
And yeah, Iowa State's going to have the crowd advantage being in Chicago.
Oh yeah, they will definitely have the crowd advantage in Chicago. I think out of pretty much everybody in that region, they probably will have the biggest advantage there.
Syracuse will draw.
That's true. Syracuse probably does have a couple Chicago alums, so
yeah. But Iowa State, Virginia,
that'll be a very well played game. Yeah. I am intrigued to see how Brogdon plays defensively. He'll probably be matched up against Niang, which will probably be the matchup that pretty much wins the game for either side. If Brogdon can continue to be the lockdown presence that he is, I think UVA takes care of business. But if Iowa State and their wide array of talented players are able to get some kind of advantage over the Cavaliers, I think Iowa State could sneak up and maybe surprise UVA and move on to the Elite Eight.
Do you think Brogdon is the best player left in the field, or do you still give it to Buddy Hield?
I still would probably give it to Buddy Hield, but Brogdon's breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
I will absolutely say that much.
Buddy Hield had 35 last night.
He did, and he had 30 points in the second half. So
yeah, from what it sounds like, from what he said, apparently the VCU players started talking trash.
Bad idea.
How he's supposed to be the player of the year.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
Bad idea, VCU. Bad idea. Don't poke the bear.
And yeah, Gonzaga, Syracuse. Regardless,
I don't know. I don't know.
I think Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Wilcher and Sabonis play against Syracuse's zone defense. Syracuse, I don't know what to make of Syracuse because they're such a weird team. They don't really have a lot of length, which could hurt them, but their defensive style could help them.
Yeah.
So again, that's another one that could go literally either way, and we'll definitely have a double-digit seed playing for the right to get to the Final Four either way, which is always fun.
I think the lack of length is pretty big, though, because, Wilcher and Sabonis are going to get the majority of Gonzaga's points or possessions,
Yeah, definitely. But, yeah, I really don't know what to make of that one at all whatsoever.
And then, back to Thursday because we did the Friday games first.
Yep, let's go to the South. Kansas plays Maryland, which will be a very fun matchup in Louisville.
Yeah.
You have a really talented team in Kansas. You have a team in Maryland that's very talented, but haven't necessarily put it together. But they kind of woke up against Hawaii and started beating the tar out of them.
Yeah, I still think Maryland's got one of the highest ceilings of any team in the country. I mean, now that they're down to here, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they're going to get a pretty decent geographical boost from being in Louisville. I don't.
Well, Kansas will still.
Kansas will travel, yeah.
Yeah, Kansas will definitely have the advantage there, but Maryland should travel pretty well. I mean, it's not that far away from Kentucky.
No, it's 9 hours.
I mean, that's not awful. I mean, out of all the teams that are there, they're probably either number 2 or number 3, depending on how Miami fans travel. I don't know about Villanova.
I don't think Miami fans are going to travel.
That's true. I mean, it is, But yeah, then we have Miami and Villanova. Nova, I kind of like Nova in this matchup.
Yeah, I do too. A big part of Miami is they got the one big guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name, but
Tanya Jakiri.
He gave Butler a lot of problems. But other than that, it's kind of bad. I like Nova's personnel against him. Angel Rodriguez, real boom or bust, and I think you can definitely get Brunson on him or Josh Hart on him to really clamp down.
Yeah, same thing with Sheldon McClellan, who's another pretty good transfer that Miami pulled off getting 2 years ago. But yeah, I think that backcourt's very good, but I think Villanova's backcourt's pretty damn good too. And I think Hart can definitely be a good on-ball defender for either of those players. Same thing with Brunson. And I don't know. I mean, if Villanova is going to continue with this ball pressure defense that they put on display against UNC Asheville and Iowa over the weekend in Brooklyn, it's really tough for me to see. I mean, I don't know if their shooting performance is going to stay the same.
Yeah.
But they keep up that defensive performance, and if they continue to feast off points from their turnovers that they force, they're tough to beat.
Yeah, Villanova just has to make sure they don't fall in love with the three, especially if they're not falling. Because I know against UNC Asheville they hit the first two, and then they kind of missed a bunch of them, and then near the end of the first half they started hitting again. But at UNC Asheville, if it's not working against a better team, you got to abandon it early.
I mean, but it worked for them against Iowa, so.
Yeah. Miami doesn't force a lot of turnovers, which
they don't. They do not force a lot of turnovers at all.
They don't commit a lot of turnovers either on offense.
But against a team like Villanova, who when they're hitting their shots, they're really hitting their shots. You might need to try and get some mistakes out of them. But they're a veteran team. They don't make a lot of mistakes at all. And they will make you pay if you make a lot of mistakes. So.
Exactly. All right, then heading out west.
We both agree that Villanova is our pick here, but I personally think that, I don't know if they're going to beat Kansas, so I think they should be rooting for Maryland to somehow beat Kansas.
But like I told you, you win this game, anything can happen in those 40 minutes to
That's true. That's true.
And Villanova is, from what I'm seeing here, one of the highest favored in the Sweet 16 per KenPom. They're at 64%.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised about how much they're favored against Miami, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. All right, heading out west. We have Texas A&M and Oklahoma,
which should be a fun matchup. Little old school Big 12 football rivalry there.
Yeah, we couldn't get A&M Texas, but
we can get A&M Oklahoma.
I think I like Oklahoma.
I do too.
Buddy Hield, and when in doubt, go with the best player on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
But Oklahoma's not a great rebounding team, so if A&M can use some of their bigger guys to grab some rebounds, maybe offensive, maybe extend possessions a little bit, that's big.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But like you said, when in doubt, go with the team with the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
I think OU is definitely a lot better than A&M. So, but anything can really happen. But
yeah,
I'll stick with Oklahoma here.
And
then we have Oregon versus Duke.
Your main event of Thursday evening.
Yes, out in Anaheim. I'll be interested to see how the crowd is for that one, because certainly Duke travels very well, but it's not a far trip for many Oregon fans going down to Southern California, a place that they're pretty familiar with going to with all the Rose Bowl appearances that they've had recently, and the occasional trip down to USC or UCLA. So Oregon's definitely going to have quite the advantage, probably from a home court perspective. Maybe not so much as Arizona's had in the past few years, but and also playing into the factor is it's Duke, so anyone who isn't a Duke fan is going to be rooting against Duke there.
Yeah.
So, but that probably was the case when they were playing Yale and UNC Wilmington. But
yeah.
I like Oregon in this matchup.
Yeah, I took Oregon as my national champion. I really do like them. I don't think last night was indicative of how they are. St. Joe's a ferocious defensive team,
and they matched up very well with them. That was a game that I remember a lot of people saying that Oregon could lose because of it could have been a bad matchup for them, but the Ducks with Dylan Brooks and Tyler Dorsey, who's playing out of his mind right now, have both been very good.
Let's not get blinded by Duke. They beat a 13 and a 12.
Yeah, I mean they're a solid team, but I know Brandon Ingram is very good.
Oh yeah,
but I really like Oregon because Duke is just very middle of the pack defensively, and if Oregon gets hot and if they start shooting the lights out against them, yeah. I know Duke has a good offense, but man.
Yeah, I mean Ingram against Chris Boucher is going to be a matchup to watch.
Yes, it is. It's a very fun matchup to watch too.
But you got Coach K, who's from Chicago, going to face a team called the Ducks in the Honda Center. So if history tells us anything, Duke might be able to win this game.
You had to bust that one out.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm sticking with Oregon.
I can take Oregon.
I've been on that bandwagon all year, and I can't pull off now. Go Ducks.
Yeah, Ducks. And if Oregon wins and Villanova wins, we're one game away from a little Dylan Ennis reunion in the Final Four.
Oh,
except, he's not playing. He's got a bad foot or something. So he might end up in sixth year next year.
Yeah, he could. Which you should still watch out for Oregon next year in 2016, 2017. But
they're not
back.
Yeah.
Man.
So that'll do it for the Sweet 16.
Yeah. So now I don't know. I don't know if we should make Elite Eight picks right now if we're going with what we have here.
Yeah, we might as well because I don't know when we're doing another one of these. So
that's true. So we had UNC winning over Indiana. I think we did at least. I don't know. Well,
I think if Carolina wins, they're going to beat either of the Notre Dame or Wisconsin. So
yeah. So you have North Carolina to the Final Four. The Midwest, that one's tough because Iowa State could beat Virginia, but Virginia also is.
Yeah, my pick was Michigan State, so
yeah,
that kind of throws things for a loop. 3 of my Final Four picks are still live, so I'm good here. But this is the only one where I have a little bit of because I think Gonzaga can beat Virginia. I don't think Syracuse can.
Yeah, no. I think if Syracuse plays Virginia, then that game might get a little ugly.
Yeah. So, I think we could put, for the sake of being different, I'll put Gonzaga there.
Yeah, that works. That works.
I took Oregon out of the West, but I think I like them against Oklahoma because of their size, and Oklahoma's size is a bit of an issue, but it obviously comes down to stopping Buddy Hield.
Yeah.
So give me Oregon down there. And then I know we're going to be different in the South. I had Villanova from the jump, but I know you like Kansas.
Yeah, I can't stand it either. But I think there's also definitely a significant possibility that we might get all 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Not the NCAA tournament, in the Final Four. Which
after this year, of course.
How funny would that be? Oh, it's going to be the most chaotic NCAA tournament ever. And all 1 seeds make the Final Four.
Well, one thing I don't get, and I saw someone tweet this the other day, you get some of these lower seeds that kind of just take it to the other team for 30 or 35 minutes, and then all of a sudden they just slow it up and, kind of ease up. You got to just play with the intensity for the entire time.
Yeah.
If you want to pull off an upset. And that's, coaching experience really does play a big part in these tournaments, which we've proven now several times.
Exactly.
So yeah. That
about wraps it up here.
I do think we have one. I think we ended up with one question.
Yeah, I think it was something about the Big East perception, right?
Yeah. How will this postseason make the Big East look to the media?
Well,
first off, I think the Pac-12 having the postseason they did takes a little bit of the pressure off the Big East, but we talked about it at the beginning. You had 2 teams that gave 1 seeds rather decent efforts. Your big 2 seed flag bearer of the conference is in the Sweet 16. Seton Hall got a bad matchup, and Xavier, probably should.
I think what helps the Big East, unlike the Pac-12, is that 4 out of the 5 teams that were playing in the NCAA tournament won their first matchup.
Yeah.
So it's not like they all had round of 64 losses.
Yeah.
Some of them did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, they hung around, 2 of them, Providence and Butler, while they weren't favored, hung around with the 1 seeds for quite some time. And both lost for different circumstances. Providence fell in foul trouble, and Butler just couldn't stop Virginia, who barely missed any shots. And Xavier, they were the only team that probably had the biggest boo-boo because they lost to a 7 seed at the buzzer. And Villanova, if anything, helped their case out in the best of way because they beat down both opponents that they had.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close for a majority of either game that they had. I mean, I know UNC Asheville kind of pushed them for a little bit in the first half, but then Villanova got hot again, and they just kept it up. They just kept it going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think perception-wise, like you said, the Pac-12 definitely took a lot of pressure off them. And yes, we're in the same position that they were last year where, you put a lot of teams in and only 1 team makes it out to the second weekend. But it was also a team that was expected to get there and a team that, expected to because, they're a high seed. And they're also a team that, many people doubted. And they proved all those doubters wrong. So I think that the perception will ease up a little bit, especially if Villanova can make the Elite Eight. Because then it looks like, okay, your conference's best team was pretty damn good because they got all the way to the Elite Eight.
Yeah. And then, you lost Kansas. Oh, well,
Okay. You lost to the potential national champion. And 2 years ago, sure, they lost to UConn, the eventual national champion, but they did so in the round of 32.
Yeah.
And another thing based on Villanova, too, is what, I don't understand, but I guess, that kind of thing happens. But the thing that I wasn't understanding with a lot of the talk about Villanova and their first and second round woes were the fact that they weren't really favored in the matchups that they were losing, or they were just 8-9 games.
Yeah.
And it's those can go either way. I think that let me see here. Let me go back. Let me go to Villanova. Back in 2011. Let me see here. So, Villanova was a 9 seed in 2011. They lost to George Mason. But George Mason then played a very good Ohio State team that I don't think Villanova would have been favored against. Because that Ohio State team had the likes of Jared Sullinger and Deshaun Thomas and Aaron Kraft and John Diebler and Buford and whatnot, they were a very good team that went to the Sweet 16. So I don't think Villanova would have been favored against them. And Villanova that year, they were just okay.
Yeah.
It's mainly been the last 2 years, which if you think about it, it's kind of silly. Like, they can't do this, they can't do that. Let's laugh at Villanova. Well, you're only talking 2 years here.
Yeah.
So what are you making the big fuss about? Like, this stuff happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, only one team wins the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it's very tough to do.
Yeah, I mean,
but like we said, all this stuff matters in terms of optics. But I don't think the Big East has. If you just look really deep into it, I don't think the Big East had a bad time this year.
No,
they avoided an epic disaster, sure, by having Villanova beat down Iowa. Because if Villanova lost to Iowa, and if Xavier lost in the fashion that they did yesterday, would people be slamming the conference? Absolutely. And it would have been deserved because Villanova had no business losing to Iowa, and I don't think Xavier had any business losing to that Wisconsin team in the way that they did.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. So I think the Big East escaped, and I think that they had an okay stint. The only team that really botched things was Seton Hall.
Yeah.
But even then, still, they ran into a bad matchup. So it's tough to really be disappointed.
And I think going forward, 5 or 6 is going to be the number of teams that they get to the tournament every year.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you're going to end up where you're matched up against one seed and you're not going to win those the majority of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's never going to be like the first year where
the first year was awful.
4 teams made it, I think, but I don't think any of them made it to the
No, none of them made it to the second weekend. None of them. Not one.
Yeah, because there was a year Creighton was good, but Baylor
dump trucked them.
Yeah.
And Xavier lost their first 4 matchup, I believe. Yeah, they lost their first 4 matchup to North Carolina State. Providence lost their matchup to North Carolina. And Villanova lost their second round matchup to UConn. So only one team won a game, and then that team ended up losing to the eventual national champions in the second round. So that's probably never going to happen again. Hopefully not, at least.
No, because just off the bat, I feel safe to say Villanova's going to be back next year. Xavier's going to be back next year.
Yes.
One of St. John's and Marquette might be back next year. Creighton's a team I'm high on for next year.
Seton Hall will be back there next year too.
Butler. In terms of getting an NCAA tournament bid for next year is DePaul.
Yeah.
But other than that, right now, I think all 9 teams next year could make a case for one. We obviously don't know how Providence is going to be, but I think Ben Bento, if he stays, can put you in the conversation off the bat. I don't know how I feel about Georgetown either. But
I don't either, but we'll see how they rebound.
Yeah. But, going forward, it's not bad for the Big East because they're going to end up with 5 or 6 teams in every year, and eventually, maybe the pendulum swings the other way. They get 3 or 4 or 5 teams to the Sweet 16 instead of just 1.
Yeah,
but,
I mean everything.
If Villanova wins their next 3 games, no one's talking about this anymore.
Exactly, because it's like, okay, we have a national runner-up. Cool.
Yeah. So, it's all about perspective.
Yes, exactly. Perspective, context, and thank God we're not the Pac-12.
I mean, you ask about the national media talking about it. ESPN's not going to talk about them anyway, so don't worry about it. And CBS has always been incredibly fair to the Big East.
Oh, always.
So,
with the exception of Gottlieb, but having talked to Gottlieb at Tournament Media Day, I get what he's saying. It's just like they're not a loaded conference anymore with not a lot of pros, so they're going to struggle a little bit, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
But CBS has always been incredibly fair to the Big East Conference. So if we're just talking about ESPN, it's just like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
And I think from what I gathered from what some of the people at ESPN were saying, a lot of them were impressed with Villanova's performance yesterday. I think Jay Billis had been like, wow, at Villanova's performance, and Seth Greenberg was talking pretty highly of them on both sides of the ball too. So they opened some eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. But
yeah, I think that about does it here. And that was
just real quick while we're talking about CBS and Twitter and such. Can we all just come together as a nation and realize that John Rothstein is working a gimmick and he's actually really good at in video and sideline and writing articles? You know.
People.
I believe Jay writes on Francesa today. I haven't seen a time, but
Jesus Christ,
probably will be today or tomorrow or something. They go back.
Hopefully, it's not as disastrous as his performance with Kevin Willard, which didn't exactly end up being a good thing for Seton Hall. The Francesa jinx.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of jinxes, Iowa was on the cover of Sports Illustrated last week, so could have bet the farm on Villanova.
Indeed.
But yeah, Jay Wright, if he's not on Francesa today, he'll be on tomorrow. We'll tweet it out. I'll probably listen to it again like I did Kevin Willard.
Yep.
That should about do it here, I believe.
I would think so, yeah.
Talked about everything we need to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Forgot to mention, Raft is going to be on the call for Villanova's game. Major news. Matt, the commentator pairings for the regionals kind of surprised me a little bit. I'm not, upon further review, I'm not really surprised that they stuck Nance in Louisville because calling Kansas makes a ton of sense since he called them in the first round. And I think that maybe if Kentucky had made it to the East, I think there was a good chance that maybe he would have followed them, but they instead gave him Kansas. I'm very, very surprised that they're trotting Vernon Spinarco all the way out west, especially since they kept them in Brooklyn for 2 straight weeks for the A-10 championship and those first 2 rounds in Brooklyn. So that kind of surprised me a little bit there. And LaForce will be joining them out west. And I guess I guess you could have just thrown kind of a dart as to where Harlan was going to be, even though he had been out west, I believe, the last 2 years. Yeah. Well, actually, no. He was out west last year. I think Marv might have been out there in 2014, though. I don't remember. Oh, and Brian Anderson's out east, which, record, I'm very happy for Brian Anderson, be able to be doing a regional. Despite the fact that Wisconsin broke Xavier's hearts yesterday, he had an awesome call of that game winner by Koenig. Not many other people deserve what he's getting. So shout out to him for being awesome. Carter Blackburn also had a good call of the Northern Iowa buzzer beater by Jesperson against Texas.
Yeah.
So good for him too to be able to do well. Honestly, I think all the announced that they had a pretty good go of it this weekend. Steve Lapis kind of slumped a little bit, but that'll happen. Vernon Spinarco and LaForce were all awesome in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
They seemed like, especially Vernon Spinarco, especially during that game with Stephen F. Austin and Notre Dame, they just seemed like they were having a blast.
Yeah, I know Vern was talking about Twitter a little bit.
He was funny all weekend. I remember on Friday during the Villanova UNC Asheville game, he was talking about the True TV hashtag. He was like, if you want to know more information about what that is, don't ask me. Go to truetv.com.
Yeah, well, and he was talking about, I think in that same game, he's talking about how he watched one of the games on his phone the other day.
Yeah. And then they showed a picture of him holding up a smartphone watching the game. It was so funny. I never want Vern to retire. Ever.
No, the sport's going to lose a ton when Vern and Brent Musburger and Raff decide to hang it up.
Yeah. Oh man, that's gonna be bad.
It's going to be like college football since Keith Jackson hung it up.
Well, I mean, at least college football has Vern. They have Musburger still. So
even
though they've ESPN kind of relegated Musburger, which is unfortunate as hell.
Well, they got to promote their
I know. I'm surprised that they gave Fowler the lead play-by-play role. I mean, he's a good studio guy. I don't think he's as bad as Ernie Johnson as play-by-play, which, and not for nothing. And I know we're shifting topics here. I know we're getting a little bit derailed, but that happens on this show often if you've been paying attention.
Yeah.
If Brian Anderson isn't the lead play-by-play man for the MLB playoffs this year, he'll never be. He absolutely should be. And that's no discredit to EJ, but they got to just keep him in the studio. They really do.
Hey, MLB playoff things are prevalent to me now.
They are.
I'm not used to it.
And they're not prevalent very much to me, which I'm not very much used to. So,
yeah.
The pendulum has swung, and it has swung in crazy fashion.
But, yeah, speaking of Brian Anderson and baseball, if you subscribe to MLB TV, you should watch some Brewers games, even though they're not very good, because he is very good.
Yes, he is. And, yeah, and I was going to mention this. Jim Sminarko is a good partner for Vern. He's a very underrated color commentator. So,
yeah. All right. I think we're about done here now.
Yep. Before we go even more off the rails here, we are done here with Monday Takeaway. We'll be back next week.
Maybe Monday. I'm not totally sure. Monday.
Yeah, we'll see when. Hopefully, we'll have a Big East team in the Final Four. So go Villanova. If not, we promise we won't have next week be too much like a funeral or a eulogy for the Big East Conference in 2016. But we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So for Rob, I'm Chris. Thanks for joining us here on Monday Takeaway again. You've all been awesome this whole season, and we'll be bringing you some good content related to Miami and Villanova this week. So stay tuned for all that, and enjoy the week. And we'll be watching games with you on Thursday and Friday, Saturday and Sunday.